Zigzag and One, a place where we honestly discuss how to embrace the zigs and the zags in our crazy lives. Running away is not an option. Living in defeat is not an option. Instead, learning how to keep moving forward is what we'll do together, one nugget of wisdom at a time. Your host is Melanie Brown. She's navigated a few zigs and zags in her life with the determination to never give up. Expect great stories and lots of laughs. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Thanks for joining me on the Zigzag and One podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Brown. I wonder, when you wake up in the morning, do you declare it will be a good day? Or do you wait until just before bed to decide if it's been a good or a bad day? My guest, Dr. Bengtson, believes starting your day based on his word sets the tone that it will be a good day regardless of whatever challenging circumstances occur. That's a flip on how most of us decide if we've had a good day. She's no stranger to challenging circumstances threatening to cause her to have a bad day. You'll learn about all the struggles she faced and is currently facing in our discussion. To me, that's what makes her good day perspective so amazing. Michelle practiced as a neuropsychologist for many years, but has decided to spread hope to as many people as she can as an author and speaker. And she hosts a podcast called Your Hope-Filled Perspective. She's been married to Scott for 33 years, and they have 2 sons. A couple of fun facts about Michelle is she is of New Zealand heritage, as her mother is a full Kiwi. I don't know anything about that, but that sounds really interesting to me. And no matter how cool your socks are, you won't even come close to competing with her huge, cute sock collection. There's much my hope-filled friend has to share, so I invite you to join my discussion with Dr. Michelle Bengtson. Today is going to be a good day because I have my guest, Dr. Michelle Bengtson, on the show with me. Welcome, Michelle.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Isn't it a good day?
It is a good day. It's beautiful. It may be chaos in the world right now, but I'm telling you, God gives us something every single day to show us that it is a good day.
He sure does. I would like that to catch on as a movement.
Well, I think you're doing a lot by your Facebook post that you do every morning. I wake up and I'm looking for that Facebook post that says, today is going to be a good day because, and then you have something new and fresh every day that you talk about. And I think you're right. We need to have that perspective because not just in the pandemic, but anytime, life is tough. And we can focus on the tough things and think that it's going to be a bad day or convince ourselves it's going to be a bad day when God is dropping things all around us all the time that shows us it's going to be a good day. And I love how you point that out every morning.
And it's always so interesting because I have people constantly say that is just what I needed to hear today. And it might be something that I wrote 2 weeks ago, but just finally posted today. And God always knows what his people need to hear. And I love seeing how he connects the dots, that something that he gave me as a seed, he uses to minister to someone else, to encourage them and to remind them that regardless of what they're going through, whether it's health issues or it's relationship difficulty or difficulty at work, there's always still a reason today is a good day.
I could not agree more. And what I want to make sure that we talk about today that I know, and which is why I wanted you on the show, is because you have faced some major zigzags in your life, and it could easily make it such that you are having bad day after bad day after bad day. In fact, you are in the middle of a zigzag right now.
I am.
And you still have that wonderful attitude. So, if you will, let's talk about some of those zigzags. And instead of us focusing on the zigzag, because, yuck, let's talk about what you've learned and how you see things differently as a result of those zigzags.
Well, we could probably talk for 3 or 4 episodes about all the zigzags. But what brought us to the point where I really believe that today is a good day, regardless of the zigzags, happened about 10 years ago when I became deathly ill. I was seeing patients at my private practice and doubled over in pain. And I got my patient up to the front desk for my staff to take care of her. And by the time I got back to my office, I passed out. And my husband happened to be walking into the office at that time and walked into my office and said, "You don't look well." I said, "I'm not well. Something's wrong. We need to go to the emergency room." And long story short, I ended up having 2 surgeries. I was on medically induced bed rest for 5 months.
Wow.
I went from 113 pounds down to a skeletal 74.
Whoa.
And I was kept alive on IV hydration and nutrition. And really, Melanie, during that time, I found myself really upset because I couldn't be that doctor that I was used to being, because I couldn't go to the office and help patients. I wasn't much of a wife or a mother. I was on bed rest with home health coming in to make sure that I was still alive. And I remember being angry about it and kind of resentful, because that was my ministry, seeing people in my private practice. And the longer this illness went on, the more I fell into the pit of depression. And I had ministered to patients for years and years and years. And my mother and my grandmother and my aunt had all suffered with depression. And I had experienced depression before in the form of postpartum depression, but this was different. And this lasted much longer. And very honestly, I got to the point where I told God, if this was going to be my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep on living.
Wow.
And I would never ask to go through that. And I remember thinking during that time, it was such a devastating time that people would give me scriptures like, "And all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and been called according to his purpose." I knew those scriptures, but when they gave them to me, it just felt patronizing.
Yes.
And at the time, I thought, God, I don't know how you're going to bring good out of this. How are you going to bring good out of this situation? And one of those days when I was so depressed, I posted on Facebook the very first "Today is a Good Day" post, because I found myself thinking, I've got to find a reason to live. I've got to find a reason why it's still worth getting up today. And God dropped a promise in my spirit. I don't even remember which one it was, but it was a scripture verse. And I clung to it and said, well, if God is still on his throne, then today is still a good day, because he's going to fulfill his promises. And that started the very first one. And about 2 weeks later, I hit another slump and I needed another reason why it was going to be a good day. And then about a month later, I did another one. And before you knew it, they were coming every day. And I've now been posting "Today is a Good Day" because posts every single day for 5 years.
That's incredible. But what that says to me is that it's not hard to find something to make today a good day if you've been doing this consistently for 5 years. And I know just in the last few months when I've been reading them, they're not the same thing every day.
Oh, no.
Because it appears he's revealing new and different things every day to remind you that he is good and today is good.
The only thing that is the same from day to day is that the reason why today is a good day is based on his word, because God is not a man. He cannot lie. So if he has promised he works all things together for good, or he's promised that I've come to give you my joy so that your joy might be complete. Whatever the promise is, that's the only thing that is consistent from day to day, is that it is always based on God's word, because that has to be our foundation. And I can't tell you the number of times that lifts me up out of the doldrums. It has gotten me through the zigzags because it has forced me to trust God rather than my circumstances. Right now, I'm battling cancer, but it's still a good day for a good day. I've still got my Heavenly Father who promises to protect me, to fight for me, to be with me, to comfort me, to heal me. All of those. That's 5 reasons right there why today is a good day. Even on the days I'm so sick.
And he is smiling every evening at you with those gorgeous sunsets that you keep posting. I'm like, wow, where is this place that she's at? They are incredible.
Yeah, upstate South Carolina, I'm convinced, has got some of the most beautiful sunsets. And I'm a beach girl, so there's no beach right here. But I'm telling you, his glory is in the sky more nights than I can even post.
Well, keep posting those pictures because I love looking at that before I go to bed. It's wonderful. Well, you skipped over a few things because I know there are other zigzags. You talked about the depression. How long do you think that lasted?
Probably close to a year.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In part because it's so easy when you're in the valley to engage in self-pity.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, that was very comfortable. And when I realized that valley was so crucial to my spiritual growth, and as much as that, it was crucial for my development to become a better doctor and a better wife and a better mother, I'm not sure that I really understood what spiritual warfare was before I fell into the pit of depression, which, by the way, happened 2 weeks after I told God in obedience that I would write my first book, Hope Prevails. The book is totally different because I went through that horrific depression. And what I realized is that there is a spiritual component to depression. But up until that time, with all my patients, I had addressed the physical, I had addressed the emotional, I had addressed the cognitive, but we hadn't been addressing the spiritual. And so having gone through that zigzag, I'm a different person. I'm a much better doctor. I'm a much better wife and mother and friend because I learned there is an enemy who comes to seek, to steal, kill, and destroy. And if we don't battle against him, we are not going to have the victory. That's why I had so many patients come back and relapse because we hadn't addressed the spiritual side. But what I also realized is that when we go through these difficult times, God's going to use it for our good.
Yes, he is.
Now I look back on that depression and I'm telling you, I don't ever want to go through anything like that again. But if I were to go through it again, I would know how to fight more effectively. But what I know is that he brought good out of it. So now I look back on that time and I'm grateful.
And that's why you can do today is a good day because you have many things to be grateful for. Now, fast forward a little bit because I know that the depression was where I first learned about you. And I read your book and did a book review, The Hope Prevails. I did that years ago. Wasn't able to get you for an interview then, so I'm so thrilled to have you now. But you've had some other zigzags after that.
Yeah.
Tell me about those.
When that book came out, when it finally released, the day it released, my husband was given his 3rd cancer diagnosis.
Wow.
So during the time when we thought we were going to be involved in book launch parties and book release festivities, we had to close it all down and just focus on doctor's appointments, chemotherapy, surgery, and his recovery. But that time, that was his 3rd cancer diagnosis.
I was just about to point that out. Third.
Mm-hmm. Third. And they've all been different types of cancer. But I will tell you, the first time he was diagnosed was 20 years ago. And the doctor told him with that first diagnosis, he just looked at us and said, you need to go home and get your affairs in order because you will be dead in less than 2 years.
Wow.
And that just filled me with panic. I lost my father when I was 15, and all I could think of is I'm going to be a widow and my son is going to be fatherless. That's where my mind went, instead of trusting God. And then fast forward to when he received the third cancer diagnosis, I thought, Lord, you've healed him before. You can heal him again. And even if you choose not to, we will praise you. So I learned a lot in those years. But it certainly was a point of emphasis for me that a lot of times when we are called to write and speak, the enemy is going to circle back around to see whether or not we really believe our message. And when Scott was diagnosed with that cancer diagnosis on the day that my book released, it was almost like the enemy was thumbing his fingers in my face saying, do you really believe hope prevails?
Mm-hmm.
I had to dig deep and go, yes, I do.
He's regardless calling you to task.
Turns out, yes, I do.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, you've written another book, and what is it about?
Well, the second book was the Hope Prevails Bible Study, and that just takes readers even deeper into the Word for greater help, hope, and healing from depression. But then my most recent book that came out last year in September, readers asked me to write. They just kept writing to me and saying, when are you going to write a book on anxiety? And I'm like, oh no, I am not going to write a book on anxiety. I am tired of writing these heavy hitting books. Like, I want to write about chocolate, iced tea, or beaches, like something fun. But I knew in my spirit I was supposed to do it because so many people who struggle with depression also struggle with anxiety and vice versa. Not always, but frequently. And I was one of those. I often joke that if you went with me to a family reunion, it's like walking into a walking anxiety disorder because so many of my family struggles with anxiety. And so that book is called Breaking Anxiety's Grip, How to Reclaim the Peace God Promises. But just like I mentioned, when we write and speak for the Lord, sometimes the enemy's going to attack to see if we really believe our message. And 2 weeks to the day after I turned in that manuscript to my publisher, we were on our way to an oncology appointment for my husband when I received the call that nobody expects to get, nobody wants to get. And I answered it. We were in the car and my doctor said, Dr. Bengtson, I'm sorry to tell you, but you've got cancer. We need to schedule you for surgery. And it was like I was frozen because I thought, wait, what? No, you've got the wrong person. Like, we're on our way to my husband's oncologist appointment. I would not be surprised if his oncologist said his cancer was back, but me? No, I'm healthy. And she wanted to schedule surgery. And I'm like, I can't think about that right now. Let me call you back when I have my calendar in front of me. And we got to his oncologist and we sat down and we held hands in the waiting room. And I realized you can either go down the slippery slope into worry, fear, and anxiety, or you can follow the prescription you just wrote for other people and stay in God's peace. And I had about a split second to make that decision. I thought, no, the same God who has gotten us through hurricanes and job losses and cancers for my husband and miscarriages and on, because I've had a lot of zigzags, that same God will be faithful to get me through whatever this is that we're facing. And I remember sitting there, and I'd never said this out loud before, but I just spoke it out loud and said, this did not take God by surprise. And he already knows how he's going to handle it. He has gotten me through every zigzag in my life 100% of the time. And he will get me through to this because he is faithful. And that brought so much peace. And I've remained at peace even when the cancer came back. It's okay. Didn't take God by surprise. And this pandemic, didn't take him by surprise either. And so that has been my response to this whole pandemic. And it was interesting because I interviewed my son on an episode of my podcast just to get the perspective of what are our young people facing with it. And I said, honey, how have you been dealing with it emotionally? How are you coping? He goes, well, Mom, it's like you always say. And I was like, uh-oh.
What's he going to say?
Yeah, I wasn't sure, like clean your room. I don't know. And he said, Mom, you always say. This didn't take God by surprise. And he already knows how he's going to get us through it. And I thought, oh, phew. Well, now you're repeating something good that I say. He's
learning from you, from your experiences, which is what we always want our kids to do. Yeah. But what wonderful it must have been as his mom to hear that he wasn't filled with anxiety, because you're right, there are some kids that are. And he's seen you and your husband go through many zigzags and not fall apart and not give up and not live in defeat and not just curl up in a ball and just give up. And he's learning from that. And that is powerful. Powerful. So how are you doing right now?
I have good days and I have less good days. But every day I get up and I determine that it's going to be a good day. It doesn't matter. And it's always so interesting. I should not ever be shocked. And I'm to the point where I don't think I'm surprised anymore. But when I have to speak for him, whether it's a podcast interview, a radio interview, TV, or get up and speak on a stage, I can be sicker than sick or in so much pain. It's debilitating. But as soon as I start to speak, it all goes away until about 10 minutes later. After I'm done, about 10 minutes after I'm done, then the pain or the sickness will come back. But he always comes through so that his message can get out. And so yesterday I had someone ask, how are you feeling today? And I said, well, today is a high pain day, but I'm going to be pain-free in about an hour because I've got an interview, and God always comes through. And sure enough, she texted me later in the day and said, how you doing? I'm like, I didn't have any pain for about an hour. It's back, but God did it again. It's just miraculous.
There's so much with what you have said over the course of our time together about the zigzags and about how you've looked at those and viewed those. And I hear such wisdom coming from you. And it's not this shallow wisdom. I mean, it's deep. And it's because you have gone through many, many things, much more than we could talk about today. And each time I hear that you have said, I've just leaned on God, I've trusted him. What is it that makes you feel like you can trust God? I think that I hear you say, I have seen him do it time and time and time again. So as you said, when you got this last diagnosis, that was your response?
Yeah, it really is the fact that God has proven his faithfulness 100% of the time. He has a perfect track record. Now, that doesn't mean he always comes through when I want or how I want, but he has sustained me and gotten me through every difficult life circumstance 100% of the time. And so if he's always been faithful before, I have zero reason to doubt he will be faithful again. And even though sometimes in the valley, we might struggle to remember God's faithfulness to us, he's given us his word and he's proven his faithfulness throughout scripture. So even if I can't remember, oh yeah, he got me through that and that and that, because sometimes we're not as rational and logical in the pit, but I can turn to his word and see his faithfulness. And he's got a perfect track record. And that makes it so much easier to trust him going forward, whatever going forward looks like.
What do you think about your plans or what you have envisioned when you face different struggles? How has it played out as far as what you had hoped would be the end result and what God's end result was? Do they match? Are they similar?
Sometimes they're similar. Sometimes they are vastly different. But what I have learned through that is that I tend to hold everything with an open hand. I used to hold things with a tight fist. And now I've just realized whether it's my plans for the day or whether it's my expectations for the outcome or whether it's other people's reactions, I just hold it with an open hand and go, it's up to you, Lord. Your plan is always best. So get me out of it and fill me with your plan. And it works so much better.
Yes, it does. But were you that way from the beginning, or is that something that you learned over the course of all of these years?
It's something that I've learned over the last 20 years, more so even just in the past 5 years. When my husband was first diagnosed, I told God what I wanted it to look like. And I remember saying to God, you knew that this was my greatest fear ever. It was a Job moment where Job said, the thing I have feared the most has come upon me. That's pretty much what I told God, because I had lost my father. I had a fear that I would lose my husband.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did the fear cause it? I don't think so, but it definitely opened up an area where I wasn't fully trusting God. And so now I've learned it's just easier if I will trust quicker, if I will obey quicker, if I will let him have his way, because he's not going to fight me for it. I can hold on tightly, but it's going to be more painful and it's going to be a longer learning process. So if I will just surrender it, it goes so much better.
That right there, my friend, is some deep wisdom, because many of us, and myself included, we fight God throughout the whole time about wanting our way. And I have found over the course of my journey that whatever I ask for in prayer, it might end up being exactly what I asked for, but oftentimes it's far better than I asked for. And it wasn't anything close to what I imagined for myself. He sees the big picture and he sees how it's all going to connect together. And of course, in my small perspective of being a human on this earth and his being able to see everything, he knows far more than I do and has bigger plans for my life than I ever could imagine. And that's what you're talking about, is once you start trusting him and saying, okay, your will instead of mine,
yes,
then we learn so much more. And you're right. He just keeps showing up time and time and time again. It is amazing to see how he works through our zigzags.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, unfortunately, our time is almost up. That went by super fast.
It did.
It did. Let's talk about your one takeaway. What do you want the listeners to remember?
Well, I could give you a book of takeaways. But
we only have a few minutes, Michelle.
The one that I think is probably the most compelling and that sums up this whole episode the best is that God never wastes our pain.
Yes.
Ever. I'm here to tell you, through cancer diagnoses, through job losses, through moves, through miscarriages, through children being stuck in hurricanes, I mean, all the zigzags, the one constant is God never wastes our pain.
Wow.
Ever.
Yeah, you probably could talk for a while on that one. Yes, you could. Well, I want to make sure that the listeners know how to get in touch with you, how to learn more about you. If you could share your website and share again the name of your books.
The website is drmichelleb.com. And the first book was Hope Prevails, Insights from a Doctor's Personal Journey Through Depression. And then the companion Hope Prevails Bible Study. And then the most recent book is Breaking Anxiety's Grip, How to Reclaim the Peace God Promises.
Fantastic. And I know you're working on some other things right now. Any kind of hints or tidbits about what you have coming, what you're working on?
Let's just say I've been working on Today is a Good Day for a really long time. And those who like it, I think will be really pleased with the upcoming projects.
I think I will. I know.
Yeah.
We're not going to be writing about chocolate, huh?
God has not opened the door yet, but I keep knocking.
I understand about having to write about tough topics. That's what mine is. Your ministry and mine are very similar in that we talk about some heavy hitting topics. But there's
that's
so
what
much.
people are needing. I'm not sure anybody's really needing me to write a book about chocolate, but they are needing for us to give them hope in the hard times. And I consider that a privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been such a pleasure.
It's been my delight anytime.
Wonderful. So, listeners, when life zigs and zags, and you know it will, remember that God never wastes our pain. I just love the mindset Michelle described. I really have taken hold of that. Since interviewing her, I've started my day declaring today is a good day. Deciding that whatever frustrating or difficult circumstances occurred during my day will not deter me from it being a good day has honestly increased my joy throughout the day. I encourage you to try it too. Please visit the show notes for links